This one came out in the Times from Jonathan Northcroft about why Liverpool are backing Arne Slot. And it was quite detailed about even things behind the scenes, the club's hierarchy, the way Michael Edwards is a little bit detached for it now. It's interesting he puts that there. Worst one in 70 years, but here's why Liverpool are backing Slot for now. It is still that caveat of for now. This isn't a full turn of the corner. This is just a result that's got to be continued, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And that piece, and I think there's a couple of pieces along similar lines that came out over the weekend, would have been outdated immediately. As I say, I suspect Liverpool would have sacked him if they'd lost to West Ham because of how poor West Ham have been this season, where they're up to in the league, and everything else. It had come off the back of what would have been 10 defeats in 13 at that point, which is just. This is the thing. This is why I won't write the piece. That the word from Liverpool at the moment is, we are backing the manager. We're going to stick with him. But that is, as you say, that is always true to a point. And you can't keep losing as Liverpool manager, even with all the factors on top of it. You can't keep losing. So, you look at the weekend, and it's kind of really, really helpful for Slot. Good win, good performance. That's great. But if he wins the next two, he's gone. If he loses the next two, he's absolutely gone. No one can tell me about how much they're backing him. And again, all the sources I'm speaking to at Liverpool are saying very similar things. But everybody knows as well, if he loses the next two, he'll be gone. Maybe if he loses the next one, with it being at home and they lose in bad fashion again, he could be gone after that. So let's call this as it is. Really, it's you put. The team and the manager were in a really, really dark place, in a bad situation, one where you could be one defeat away from the sack. Now, you don't just turn that around by getting one win against a poor opposition who are down near the relegation zone. You've got to put a run together, and a run where it looks like the performances will get you out of this in the long term. So that's still the job. Brilliant what happened at the weekend, but the his position is still very, very fragile, I would say. And we'd all absolutely love that he turns it round, but we've got to be realistic about where things are up to after that one. It needs to be built upon, and better performances need to be sustained over a lengthy period of time.
Does need to happen. And to be fair, we have one of your patch journalist colleagues, Lewis Xavier Steele, funnily enough, talking about it. And he said that from his information, as you said, a run of games, but almost intimating, as he said, that it needs to be like 7 from 9 minimum, including that West Ham one, to sort of keep him there.
Yeah, because you just, again, it's, I know Sunderland are flying at the moment, but it's at Anfield. And I know we're coming into this thinking, well, they've lost the last 2 at Anfield by 3 goals. I mean, that's completely unacceptable. So, the idea that you can come into this one and Liverpool play poorly and maybe nick a draw or get beaten, that would count really, really badly against him. So he absolutely needs more than that. And it's going to be a big test, the Sunderland game. I mean, West Ham, maybe Liverpool stopped them doing what they wanted, but maybe they were also just absolutely dreadful. Sunderland are confident. They play a brand of football that is direct, physical. It plays on every single weakness that Liverpool have exhibited this season. So this feels like a massive, massive game for the manager still. We're not the other side of it because he got that win against West Ham. So, like I say, it's got to be another good one, another good performance as well. And then maybe we can start to think that it's, a corner's being turned and brighter things are ahead. And I really, kind of got a few comments on YouTube about like, oh, well, you said you think that the manager should be sacked. But let's kind of explain that. I'm not in favour of the manager being sacked. I don't want to see someone lose the job. I like the guy to deal with as well, by the way. Arne has been great, and he did a fabulous job last season that, in a way that gets played down, that I think is very, very unfair on him. But equally, there is a point at which you suffer enough defeats in a row that it becomes untenable as a Liverpool manager. And all my reporting I wanted to reflect was that it was maybe it reached that point after PSV, and it was very, very hard to see a turnaround coming. And but I'm not one of those where I want to be proven right. I would love nothing more than Arne Slot to win his next 9 games to turn things around, to be Liverpool manager next season. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. But I just shared my opinion at that point, and I don't, that was based on evidence that goes back even further to maybe the back end of last season as well. And that's how I felt in that moment. And I don't think you should be kind of worried to share your opinion, particularly if you're not ranting and raving and doing it in an emotional way. I was just, I like to think I used evidence to back it up. But as I say, trust me, I would absolutely love the manager to turn this around and to win well on Wednesday, to follow that up with a win at the weekend, and they just keep rolling in. And I know they're not going to win every game between now and the end of the season, but just to turn things around as sufficiently that they comfortably qualify for the Champions League, I would love that, and give himself a chance to fix things in January, fix things in the summer, and go again. So I really hope that opinion, I end up regretting that, but I'm also not scared to kind of regret it, is what I'm saying. I gave my opinion at the time, and I'm not a guy who wants the manager gone in that sense, and dislikes him or anything like that.
It just feels a huge month for everyone, the manager, the players, in terms of how it's going to bear out for the rest of the season. The only other thing I wanted to ask you, because that was in the article from Jonathan Northcroft, talking about Luis Diaz wanting out for 18 months, because we just mentioned him there, and Liverpool looked at Pacey Weidman and mentioned that they passed up on those. Malik Fofana at Lyon, because they wanted to think about the pathway for Rio and Gamoa. It might be long term, but short term, it looks like that's not quite working as it's supposed to, almost.
Yeah, but what difference do we think Malik Fofana would have made this season? For me, not a lot. I mean, he scored a couple of goals, I think, in 9 appearances in Liga in this season. That probably translates to 0 Premier League goals. And the thing is, I think we'd have seen an awful lot more of N'Gamoura if Liverpool hadn't been in this situation. If they were winning more games, they were a bit more comfortable, we would have seen an awful lot more of him. They're not using him because they don't think he's very good. They just don't want to throw him into really terrible situations. And he has been making sub-appearances here and there, regardless of that fact, by the way. So I think in 12 to 18 months' time, I don't think anyone will think it was a bad decision not to block N'Gamoura's pathway. You need this guy to get to where he could do, because you're talking about a huge talent. So to get a 20-year-old coming in from the French league in front of him, I think in like I say, in a couple of years' time, that will look like an absolutely inspired decision, because the belief in N'Gamoura is absolute, and I don't think Fofana would have made much difference at all, if I'm honest.
Do you think they will do anything with N'Gamoura this season? Because all the suggestions are no loan, wants to stay. I know you said about managing his minutes. I actually feel for the kid, because all that seems to happen is he comes on, usually when we're 2 or 3 goals down, like break glass in case of emergency. And it's just like, you're a 17-year-old kid, try and make something happen for us in this disarray. It's just like, is that the best route for his development right now?
Yeah, but it's minutes, isn't it? And I mean, look, if you put him on loan at a Premier League side that was kind of the back end of it, they'd be spending a lot of time losing as well, and he'd be trying, ask him to turn things around for them. And I think with his 17-year-old as well, he's probably a loan move, and he has just turned 17 as well. I mean, we cannot forget that he's so young. We've got to be kind of realistic, but I also think, like I say, I think he'd have had more minutes if Liverpool were doing well. I think there have been games where they were up and they felt like they could bring him on, and they've not been able to. If the form does steady, we might see a bit more of him in the back half of the season as well. Right. And as I said, I just don't think the right route would have been to maybe add a kind of a 20-year-old in front of him who might block him off, or probably would have made very little impact on the season as a whole anyway. And one of the key reasons, and it would be nice that if the form can kind of stabilise a little bit, would be to see a bit more of N'Gamoura, because they really do believe in him, and it was a big choice that to kind of leave that spot free for him, especially when he is so young. But that's what you've got to do sometimes, that you've got to kind of take that hit in the short term for the long-term gain there. And I think, I'm looking at N'Gamoura here on Soccerbase, and he's 8 appearances already this season for someone who's just turned 17, for a side like with Liverpool's ambitions and the quality they've got. That's not bad at all. That is not bad at all. And like I say, hopefully more in the second half of the season when things settle down, because the word around him as well, though, is they absolutely love him and they think he's going to be absolutely sensational. So you've just got to give him that space. And it's unfortunate it's not worked out. It's one of the things that hasn't worked out this season entirely, and that, he could have even had more appearances. But it is what it is. And if Liverpool can turn it a bit, we will see a bit more of him, I think.
Fingers crossed on that one. And yeah, speaking of wingers, another week, another story. I'm asking you again, And your colleague Paul Joyce is on this one as well, because this was quite a big one to say City are considering triggering Semenyo's release clause. But it's also important to say when we're mentioning this, in that article, Paul Joyce does talk about Liverpool are aware of that and have looked at it. We had Lewis Steele on Media Matter saying, I think Liverpool are one of the front runners. It's just a lot of talk still around Antoine Semenyo, isn't there? And this is also a reliable journalist, to be fair, saying it.
Yeah, but it's kind of a funny one with that because I guess, they're kind of jointly written, isn't it? So it's very hard to unpick what element is kind of Paul Hurst reporting and which elements are Paul Joyce. And so, obviously Paul Hurst very close to Man City, and I wouldn't doubt that they're in the mix for him. I think a lot of clubs, and again, it's kind of the wording around the reporting as well, is kind of everybody seems to be considering triggering it. Is anybody really going to go and do it? Yeah, it's just kind of, I think a lot of people are keeping an eye on it. It's a situation that you could be pounced on, but, does that mean anything's going to come of it? Because I still just have major questions about, whether Liverpool will go there on the basis of not really what they need. Well, how high is his ceiling from this point onwards? I'm not entirely sure. If he takes a leap and he goes a bit further, then he could be great. But if he doesn't, and that's quite hard to judge. So I'm still kind of keeping my powder dry on this one at the moment in terms of I think if Liverpool did go for him, I think the player himself would love to come. And if they think it's the right move, then you've got to believe that they've got a good plan for him. But I just can't really see how that one would shake out, really. And I'm still just a bit sceptical about whether, it's something they'll go for.
Crazy enough, it opens in a month, so we won't have to wait too long to find out if Liverpool are going to make some serious moves. And, linked to transfers as well, we had, sort of since we talked last week, the Canate side of Real Madrid not pouncing. That offer still seems to be on Liverpool, up the table from Liverpool. Still mention of Ryan Gravenberch's at Bosley wanting to renew, but nothing developing. Andy Robertson, since his comments, is complete silence as well. But almost is it just silence on contracts, radio silence from the club until something just breaks like that?
Yeah, I would think so. And the thing is, the messaging around Canate is still that the talks are ongoing. The Real Madrid situation there, that makes it a little easier for Liverpool maybe to get things over the line. But also, the way he's performed this season, would they want to? I'm not sure. And where would they think money-wise? But obviously, it's one less club what you can point to and say, well, I can get more from them. So why wouldn't you match that contract offer? So that is handy for Liverpool, and you wonder whether that edges things slightly more towards a compromise. I still think Canate's got so much to give, and I think he's got he's not had a great season, obviously, but I do think he's had maybe kind of too much of the blame around what's gone wrong with Liverpool. I think the team as a whole has just been very, very poor, and he's been at the heart of some of it, but not all of it. So I still think he's a very, very good player and one Liverpool can get an awful lot out of. So I would love, and for continuity's sake, I would love to see them sign him up for a bit longer as well, to be honest, because change is it's not really massively helpful. So hopefully they can get him tied down, but we're not hearing much at the moment. Everything I'm hearing, both player side and Liverpool side, is it's ongoing. We'll see. So we will see with that. On Szoboszlai, progressing. Fingers crossed that will get done. There doesn't seem to be kind of the threat of other clubs coming in at the moment, which is helpful. And of course, he's not at the very end of his contract, which makes a nice change for Liverpool, so that's good. And on Robertson, this is more gut feeling, really, based on kind of conversations I've had. But I don't know if I would just be surprised if he gets an extension from here, to be honest. He very nearly went over the summer, and it was something he thought long and hard about. And of course, that would have required a fee. Now he's got the opportunity to go on a free transfer, kind of easier for everyone if that's the way. He's going to play less games. I think we're starting to see a bit more of Kirkes now, so he's pretty much going to nail that down, I think, in the second half of the season. I just think it makes sense for everyone, really, if Robertson were to move on at the end of the season, which is a shame because he's a legend and he's still very, very important in terms of around the squad. But he'll probably want to go and play more frequently, and there will be offers on the table for him. So I think everyone would wish him all the best. And my feeling is that's the way it's going.
Yeah, it does feel that way. One Liverpool legend is most likely to depart this summer. And then we've got to talk about this in a bit of depth because of yesterday and where Mo Salah sat and where Mo Salah spent all of yesterday as well. And Arne Slot was asked it before, and this is what he said afterwards about Mo Salah and his being on the bench for this one.
Last time I was approached now, well, yeah. What were you thinking going next? Was he going to better rest?
No, I got this question, of course, already a lot. And it's every time when we play a game, when I don't play Florian Wirtz, when I don't play Alexander Isak, when I don't play Kuitke, when I don't play Mo Salah, it's about that, which is normal because they're all outstanding players. And Mo has had an unbelievable career at this club and will have a very good future at this club because he's such a special player. 4 games in 10 days with only 14 to 15 outfield players available for us. Then you have to decide once in a while to make a certain lineup, and you try to pick the best lineup for every single game. And today, with the way they set up, with a fullback that's constantly very high and a winger that's constantly inside, I thought that this could help the team. But
I mean, the fact that he's talking about West Ham setting up with a winger high and wide, and that plays into his mindset, and how he's been unbelievable, but now he's very good. It's the fact that I get what he was saying about, you've got to rotate and all this, but there's a lot of players who weren't rotated. I'm struggling to see this anything but Mo Salah was dropped for this game.
Yeah, I'd agree, to be honest, because the fact is, the manager had a game there where he probably knew his job was on the line, and if Liverpool lost it, he was out of a job. So you're not telling me he's planning for 4 games in 10 days on that basis, because he's thinking, well, if I don't win this one, there will be no 4 games in 10 days for me. It'll be someone else in the hot seat. So, and he's looked at that and thought, this is the team that's most likely to get me a win, and it doesn't have Mo Salah in it. And I mean, at what point in the last 9 seasons have you ever said that? You just haven't. So it was a big call and a big decision for him to make. And there was kind of more to it, really. And I do think he will play over this period because he's got to, and you've got to kind of rotate through this period. But for him to not be selected for that one felt like a really important choice. And you have to say, the manager kind of was rewarded for that bravery, really, because I think, Liverpool were solid. They didn't give anything up. They didn't look in any threat down that right-hand side with that Szoboszlai and kind of Gomez, Marshall in that area. And of course, Mo Salah hasn't been giving you the real output recently either. So it looked like the right decision. Now, the big call is which of these games does he come back in for? How does he make that decision? It's a really difficult one. But I think it shows at the moment that maybe he thinks his best, most balanced team doesn't have Mohamed Salah in it. And you see his side with Wirtz in it, with Isak in it. Is it kind of, this is where he sees things going in the future? Is this the Liverpool 2.0 that he's kind of aiming towards? Maybe. And it's an interesting one. I'd be fascinated to see which of the games he's picked to come back in for. But it felt like a bit of a statement, really.
I mean, even yesterday, because you're right, it wasn't spectacular, but you looked at the heat map afterwards for Gomez and for Szoboszlai, and it's very, very different from what you've seen a lot of this season with Salah, Bradley underlapping as well. They got chalk on the boots quite often, Szoboszlai and Gomez. But it's not about being derogatory for Mo Salah because he's my favourite player, but it just looked a lot more solid, compact, and especially from the defensive elements, because we've been hemorrhaging goals recently, so much better.
Yeah, but it's just been too easy to get down that side, which, again, I've been a big supporter of that fact because it's absolutely fine if you've got a goals and assist machine who's not doing running down that side. But when he's not providing that, you are both weaker down that side of the pitch and you're not scoring to cover it up. And Liverpool have been bad in both aspects in terms of finishing, scoring goals, chance creation versus kind of what they've been getting on the defensive end. So it was the right decision, really, to do it. And as you say, the tough one now is that you're not going to leave him out of every game till he goes to AFCON now. Absolutely not. But which ones are you going to pick and choose for him? That's the really tough decision for the manager, because he obviously thinks it slightly weakens his side to have Mo Salah in it at the moment. So it's some big calls for him to think about around that. But it was a big call that worked for him, I think, at West Ham.